If you stand in the center of Bruges today, in the shadow of the great belfry, you are surrounded by a kind of quiet, preserved perfection. Tourists drift by in horse-drawn carriages. The air smells of warm waffles and rich chocolate, and swans glide silently across pristine, willow-draped canals. The city feels like a fairy tale, a peaceful, frozen-in-time monument to the Middle Ages. But if you were to stand in that exact same spot in the year 1200, and the sensory experience would violently overwhelm you. The air does not smell of chocolate. It smells of stale human urine, wood smoke, rotting fish, and the pungent, chemical stench of boiling madder root used for dyeing cloth. The quiet is replaced by a deafening polyglot roar. You would hear the aggressive shouting of merchants haggling in early forms of German, Italian, French, and English. You would hear the relentless, rhythmic clacking of thousands of heavy wooden looms echoing from the cramped houses, and the groaning of massive wooden cranes unloading cargo from wide-bellied ships. This is not a quiet fairy tale town. This is the Wall Street of the 12th and 13th centuries. It is an aggressive, polluted, rapidly expanding hyper-capitalist machine. It is the financial and commercial heart of Northern Europe, a place where fortunes are made overnight, and where the modern global economy is taking its first, muddy steps. To understand how Bruges became this economic powerhouse by the year 1200, we have to look not at human engineering, but at a catastrophic act of nature. For a long time, Bruges was an unremarkable settlement, a small fortress, or burg, slightly inland, cut off from the deep waters of the North Sea. But in the year 1134, a massive, violent storm battered the coast of Flanders. The storm surge was so powerful that it tore a deep, wide channel through the coastal dunes, flooding the land and creating a tidal inlet known as the Zwin. Overnight, nature had handed Bruges a deep-water highway directly to the sea. By the year 1200, the city has capitalized on this geographic miracle. The Counts of Flanders, currently led by Count Baldwin IX, though he is soon to depart on the Fourth Crusade, have heavily fortified and protected this trade route. Bruges has become the hinge of the known world. It sits exactly at the geographical midpoint between the two great economic engines of the Middle Ages. From the north comes the Hanseatic League, the vast network of Baltic and Germanic merchants sailing in deep draft cogs. They bring raw, essential materials, timber from the dark forests of Russia, beeswax for the candles of Europe's churches, amber, furs, and millions of barrels of salted herring. From the south come the fleets of the Italian city-states, Genoa, Venice, and Florence, and they bring luxury, bolts of shimmering silk, exotic spices like pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg from the Silk Road, and alum, a crucial mineral used to fix dyes into cloth. And Bruges is where these two worlds collide. It is the great clearinghouse. But Bruges is not just a passive marketplace. It has its own supreme product to offer, a product that the entire medieval world desperately wants: Flemish broadcloth. In the year 1200, cloth is the oil of the medieval economy, and Flanders is the undisputed center of production. But making this cloth is not a gentle artisanal craft. It is a brutal, proto-industrial process that dictates the daily life of tens of thousands of ordinary people in the city. If you walk away from the grand market squares and step into the narrow, unpaved side streets, you enter the working-class neighborhoods. The houses here are not the grand, stepped gable brick mansions you see in Bruges today. In 1200, brick is still a luxury reserved for churches, the Count's administration, and the very wealthiest merchants. The ordinary people live in tightly packed, highly flammable wooden houses with thatched roofs. The streets are essentially mud pits, sometimes stabilized with laid timber planks, slick with rain and waste. Inside these dim, smoky houses, the weavers work. Weaving is exhausting, full-body labor. Men sit at massive wooden broadlooms for 12 to 14 hours a day, throwing the heavy wooden shuttle back and forth, turning high-quality raw wool, imported by the ton from the sheep pastures of England, into thick, durable, magnificent cloth. But the weaver is only one part of an immense assembly line, as before the wool even reaches the loom, it must be sorted, washed, carded, and spun into yarn, tasks almost exclusively performed by women, whose relentless labor underpins the entire urban economy. After the cloth is woven, it goes to the fullers. Fulling is perhaps the most unpleasant job in the city. The raw, woven cloth is stiff and greasy with sheep's lanolin. It must be cleaned and thickened. The fullers place the heavy woolen sheets into large wooden vats filled with a mixture of water, fuller's earth, a type of clay, and stale human urine, which is collected from households across the city because its high ammonia content acts as a natural bleaching and cleansing agent. The fullers spend their days barefoot, stomping heavily on the wet cloth in these urine-filled vats to mat the fibers together. Once fulled, the cloth goes to the dyers. The dyers operate along the canals, as their trade requires massive amounts of running water, and they boil the cloth in massive copper cauldrons filled with plant-based dyes. Madder root yields a brilliant, highly prized red. Woad produces a deep, rich blue. The dyers' hands and arms are permanently stained the color of their trade, and the toxic chemical runoff from their cauldrons is dumped straight back into the Rye River and the city's canals. This brings us to the reality of sanitation and daily survival in medieval Bruges. Today, the tourists pay to take romantic boat rides down the city's waterways. In 1200, those same waterways are the city's lifeblood, but they are also its industrial arteries and its open sewers. The water is choked with the blood and offal from the butcher's quarter, the chemical waste of the dyers, and the daily human waste of a densely packed population. You do not drink the water in Bruges. To do so would mean almost certain death from dysentery or other waterborne diseases. Instead, everyone drinks ale. From toddlers to the elderly, the citizens of Bruges consume weak, low-alcohol beer, known as small beer, throughout the day. The boiling process used in brewing kills the bacteria, making it the only safe source of hydration. The daily diet of an ordinary artisan is heavily reliant on this ale, alongside dark, dense rye bread, cheap salted herring imported from the Baltic, and thick, slow-cooked pottages made of peas, beans, and whatever root vegetables are available. Fresh meat is a rarity for the working class, reserved for feast days or the tables of the wealthy patricians. If you fall ill in this harsh environment, your options are limited, but Bruges is remarkably advanced in its civic and religious care. By 1200, the Hospital of St. John, St. Jan's Hospital, is already fully operational. Run by monks and nuns under the Augustinian rule, it is not a hospital in the modern medical sense. It is a place of hospitality and spiritual care. Inside its large, high-ceilinged stone wards, the sick, the destitute, and weary pilgrims are given a clean bed, warmth, and regular meals. The focus here is on the healing of the soul rather than the body. Altars are placed so that the bedridden can observe the Mass. as medieval medicine dictates that physical illness is deeply intertwined with spiritual standing. Religion dictates the rhythm of daily life. The ringing of church bells tells the weavers when to start work, when to take a meal, and when to extinguish their fires at night. The crucial curfew, or couvre-feu, meant to prevent the wooden city from burning to the ground. Yet, beneath this rigid, religiously ordered society, a radical transformation is occurring in how humans handle wealth. This is the era where modern finance is being born in the mud of Flanders. Because Bruges is the meeting point for merchants from across the known world, a massive logistical problem arises. A merchant arriving from Venice cannot easily buy Baltic timber using Venetian ducats, and he certainly cannot barter hundreds of pounds of delicate silk for thousands of barrels of rotting herring. Carrying chests of gold and silver across the bandit-infested roads of Europe or the pirate-filled waters of the Atlantic coast is incredibly dangerous. To solve this, a new system emerges. When foreign merchants arrive in Bruges, they need a safe place to stay, a secure warehouse for their goods, and someone who understands the local laws and exchange rates. Local innkeepers and brokers step into this role. They begin operating out of designated hostelries. They offer secure vaults. They facilitate the legal contracts between a buyer from Novgorod and a seller from Florence. And most importantly, they begin to offer credit. By the late 12th and early 13th century, we see the very early mechanisms that will soon formalize into the first stock exchange. Instead of trading physical gold, merchants begin using letters of credit and bills of exchange. A merchant can deposit gold with a banker in Florence, receive a piece of paper, travel to Bruges, and present that paper to a broker who will honor the debt and allow him to purchase Flemish broadcloth. Wealth is becoming abstract. It is moving from heavy chests of metal to ink on parchment. In the coming decades, a local family of brokers named Van der Beurs will become so prominent in this trade that the square in front of their inn will become the daily meeting place for international traders. The family's name, Beurs, will become synonymous with the financial market itself, giving us the modern words Bourse, Bolsa, and Börse, the stock exchanges of today. But in 1200, the foundation of this paper economy is already being laid by the innkeepers and money changers of Bruges. However, this massive influx of international wealth creates a dangerous, volatile society. Bruges in 1200 is deeply divided. On one side are the patricians, the wealthy merchant class who own the looms, control the raw wool imports, and dominate the city council. They dress in fine, brightly dyed wools and imported silks, and they eat diets rich in spiced meats and expensive French wines. And on the other side are the artisans, the weavers, fullers, and dyers. Despite creating the product that makes the city rich, they live in precarious poverty. They are paid piece rate, entirely dependent on the patricians for their raw materials and their wages. If a war between France and England cuts off the supply of English wool, the weavers of Bruges starve. This immense inequality breeds a simmering, violent tension. In the cramped taverns, the artisans form powerful guilds to protect their interests, setting the stage for massive, bloody class revolts that will define the city's future. The workers know they hold the true power of production, and they deeply resent the patricians who reap the profits. But there is a greater threat to Bruges than class warfare, and it is entirely invisible to the merchants counting their silver. The geographical miracle that created the city's wealth is slowly, steadily undoing itself. The Zwin, the great tidal channel that connects Bruges to the sea, is silting up. Every tide brings thousands of tons of North Sea sand into the inlet. By 1200, the largest, deepest-bellied merchant ships can no longer make it all the way to the docks of Bruges. The city is forced into an agonizing, continuous battle against nature. To save their economy, the administrators of Bruges undertake massive engineering projects. Just a few miles down the channel, they build a new outer port town called Dam in 1180. The massive sea-going vessels now have to stop at Dam, where their cargo is painstakingly unloaded onto smaller, flat-bottomed barges, which are then rowed or pulled by horses down the shallowing canals into Bruges. It is a desperate, expensive workaround. For the next few centuries, the people of Bruges will dig, dredge, and build new canals, fighting a losing war against the shifting sands of the coast. When you walk through Bruges today, you are walking through the aftermath of that defeat. Compare the city of today with the city of 1200. Today, the grand brick and stone buildings surrounding the Markt and the Berg squares speak of immense wealth. But many of the brick facades you see now were built later, in the 14th and 15th centuries, during the final golden autumn of the city's prosperity, before the Zwin choked completely. And many more were heavily restored in the 19th century to look perfectly, romantically medieval. The wooden, muddy, chaotic Bruges of 1200, the city of the Fullers and the Dyers, has largely rotted away or been built over. The waterways that are today so clean and reflective were, back then, the terrifyingly polluted engines of an industrial superpower. Eventually, nature won. By the 1500s, the Zwin had completely filled with silt. No ships could reach the city. The wealthy merchants, the Italian bankers, and the Hanseatic traders simply packed up their ledgers and moved their operations to the new deep-water port of Antwerp. Bruges was abandoned by the global economy. The looms fell silent. The city entered a long, dark period of profound poverty, and it became known as Bruges la Mort, Bruges the Dead. But it was exactly this tragic economic collapse that saved the city's medieval architecture. Because Bruges was so poor for so many centuries, it completely missed the Industrial Revolution. In the 18th and 19th centuries, while cities like London and Paris were bulldozing their medieval centers to build wide boulevards, train stations, and modern factories, Bruges had no money to build anything new. Its citizens were forced to simply live in the aging shells of their former glory. The city was preserved not by care, but by neglect. When you look at Bruges today, you are looking at the beautiful corpse of a medieval superpower. The city teaches us a profound lesson about the fragility of human civilization. In the year 1200, Bruges was the center of the world. It was a place of terrifying innovation, relentless labor, and unimaginable wealth. It birthed the foundations of modern banking and international trade. Its citizens believed their prosperity was ordained by God and guaranteed by their own relentless work ethic. But beneath it all, the foundation of their world was nothing more than a temporary channel of water. A city can build the greatest financial empire on earth. It can invent the stock market, and it can clothe the known world. But in the end, it was brought to its knees by the slow, silent accumulation of sand.